All right, can everyone hear me? Yeah, I can see the chat now. Perfect. All right, we're back. So yeah, let's keep going. COVID-19 has affected box office sales. So our kind of possible research question here, what do you think? This is important if you're a movie executive and you're thinking, it might never be the case that people want to come back to theaters, right? So what's something that you might want to know if you're this movie studio executive? Yeah, perfect. So these are all great. Should I switch the model of delivery, right? Should I switch to streaming instead of relying on selling in theaters? Should I reduce the price of movie tickets, right? What would that mean? That would mean that when I, give my movie to theaters for them to screen, I say, hey, I'll take a little bit less money, but you have to charge a lower price, right? Perfect. How can I make the customers feel that the price is reasonable? How can I encourage customers to come back? These are all great, right? So here we have one possibility, will they come back to theaters post-COVID? This is kind of exploratory, right? Because I'm not sure what's important to people for bringing them back to theaters. So I kind of want to find out what people are thinking, right? So that's a potential option, but you guys have some great ones in the chat as well. Okay. All right, so the next thing you want to do is develop a research plan. And your research objective will motivate your plan. Your objective implies specific information that you need. And the research plan outlines what these needs are. Right? So for this one, will people return to movie theaters eventually? Our research plan is the answer to the question, what information should we gather to answer this question, right? What information should we get? Let's say we decide to run a survey of people, right? We want to know what they're thinking. The research plan is, okay, what questions am I going to put on the survey? Questions like, will you ever feel safe coming back? If theaters, have vaccine passports, will you feel safe? If I lowered the price, do you think that would help? All these sorts of things, right? Okay, so that's our research plan. Once we have that research plan specified, then it's time to collect data, right? There's a few kinds of data that we can collect. Primary sources is data that's collected in response to the research question we have for our decision that we're trying to make with that research question, right? When I run the survey of people, asking them how they feel about coming back to the movie theaters, that's primary data because I'm gathering it to answer that specific question. Secondary data is data that's collected for other reasons, right? Not to answer our specific question, but it could be useful, right? So primary, that would be the survey. Secondary, if we're trying to answer this question about going back to theaters, one data set you can use is mobile phone tracking, right? So you can buy data on, are people actually starting to go back to theaters? And then you can look like, is it people in urban areas? Is it people in suburban areas, right? So you can see with the secondary data, okay, what kind of people feel safe to go back? That data isn't collected for our research question, but we can use it, right? It's a secondary source. And secondary sources can be internal, so they can be something that your company itself has just collected, like sales data, or they can be external from things like the government or these third-party sellers like this mobile phone tracking that I mentioned. Now, with these two different kinds of sources of data, we can gather two different kinds of preferences, okay? Preferences being, what do people like? Or what do people think? Revealed preferences mean what people do or buy shows us what they like, right? So cell phone tracking data, if people are going back to theaters, that shows us that they feel safe because they're actually doing it, right? So revealed preferences are, what people do shows us what they like or prefer. Stated preferences are what people say that they like shows us what they like. So with the survey, you can ask, do you feel safe going back? And someone can say yes, or someone can say no, but it's just what they say, right? And you kind of need to trust that what they say is true, or maybe you don't trust that, right? In which case you would need that revealed preference data, right? There's often a really big difference, right? So we're seeing, now a lot of vaccine kind of policies from the government, one of which is, you need to be vaccinated to work for this kind of government employer. And when you ask people, are you okay with that? A lot of them say, no, like, I'm not okay with that. I wouldn't go back if I have to get a vaccine. Not a lot of people, but some people. But then when you look, like, once it's actually implemented, who quits, because those are the people who really, like, they don't want to come back, so they're going to quit. That number can be very different than the number of people who say that they would not want to come back. Stated versus revealed preferences, okay? So primary data, you guys might want to collect some for a research question for your marketing project. You can run a survey, okay? With a survey, you'll get stated preferences, right? You'll get what people say they like or say they want to do. One benefit is it's inexpensive, right? For some survey types, you can run a poll on a popular website, or you can do a poll on Instagram or some other social media or TikTok, or you can even just kind of stand outside talking to people, asking their opinion, or even more than that, you can just kind of talk to people that you know and ask them to fill out this kind of survey. This type of survey is called a convenience sample. Convenience sample means, it's not representative, right? It doesn't represent the full group of people that you care about when you're trying to answer your research question, but it is convenient to get this sample, right? It's cheap and easy. More expensive, you can pay a company that maintains a group of representative people. A representative can be Canada-wide. It can be sort of like a representation of the entire country, or it can be just, people who are 18 to 35 years old, right? But these companies pay these people to answer your questions, okay? So this can be more representative, but it's more expensive. So I would expect you guys, if you do anything, to kind of do an Instagram poll or like a TikTok poll or something like that. The other way you can collect primary data is by observing, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about a company that did this in a few slides, but you can kind of observe what people choose or what people do, and then use that to answer your survey questions or to answer your research question. There's something special you have to do if you're trying to answer a causal question, and that's collecting what's called experimental data. So very briefly, there's a whole course on this, on how to run marketing surveys. But in just one slide, what you want to do is, if you're trying to answer a causal question, remember that's the question where if I change something, how will people react? So you need to gather a sample. And then for one group of people, you don't change anything. For the other group of people, you change the thing that you're thinking about, right? That's your treatment group. They get the new changed thing. And the control group keeps things as they were. So what could the changed thing be? Well, we talked about raising prices when our costs go up as a coffee shop, right? So one thing that you could do is you could run a survey paying one of these companies, and you could randomly select some of the people in your survey. Out of 100, you could pick, say, 50 and say, hey, if coffee was $1.80 or $1.50, how much would you buy? And for the other ones, you say, okay, if coffee was $1.80, how much would you buy, right? The ones with more expensive coffee probably are going to buy less. So we can say, oh, this is kind of the effect of price, right? I've changed the price for these 50 people and they're buying less. So the difference between those two groups gives me the answer to my research question, right? What's the effect of raising price on my sales? Jeremy asks, do surveys skew results to the type of people who take surveys? Great question. I think the point of the companies that I noted here, so SurveyMonkey is good in the sense that they're paying people enough that you think it'll be fairly representative, right? Because one issue with surveys is if you're making, $200,000 a year, let's say, you're not willing to maybe waste your time answering surveys for $1, right? So you need to be paying people enough that they're kind of willing to sit through the survey, right? To get that kind of representative sample, not just of people who are willing to take the survey. But yeah, most of the time it is an issue, which is why most companies would basically just try to pick out the group of people that they think are their best customers, and then sort of pay them whatever it takes to get them to provide their responses. Okay, so there's a few bad things you can do when you're trying to answer a causal research question, right? So we're trying to find the effect of high coffee prices on how consumers react. So instead of doing an experiment, what if we just looked at a market that has high coffee prices, like Yellowknife, which is a city in the far northern part of Canada, and coffee is expensive there, and compare how much people buy to, a market where coffee price is low, like Toronto, relatively low, right? And the issue there is, it's true that the price of coffee is different, but a lot of other things are different too, right? So if we see that coffee consumption is different, it might not just be because of the price. It could be that maybe incomes are different, preferences for coffee are different. It's colder in Yellowknife, so maybe people want a hot drink more often. So many different reasons, right? And that's basically the one pitfall you need to avoid. Yeah, perfect. Less competition too. That's kind of the one pitfall you need to avoid. You want to make sure that you're comparing two things that are kind of equivalent in every way except for the price, right? So for instance, here's another problem. If you do a premium blend that's 30 cents more expensive, you could say, hey, let me compare how well this sells to the cheaper blend, and maybe that's the effect of price. But that won't give you a good answer either, right? Because you're changing two things at once. You're increasing the price and seeing how people react, but you're also increasing the quality, right? So by changing those two things, you're not finding how do people react to price, you're finding how do they react to price and quality together. Okay, and lastly, this is speaking to, is your survey group representative? If you're only testing the higher price on your loyal customers because you're worried about losing people, well, your loyal customers have different behavior, right? They're going to be buying more coffee anyway, right? So comparing their behavior, even at a higher price, to a group of non-loyal customers at a lower price won't give you a good result. So the last thing we want to do is interpret and report our findings. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. The most common way is going to be with just kind of like a bar chart or a pie chart showing how people are responding to your questions, right? If you're doing a descriptive study where you're asking people, hey, would you buy this new product at a price of $100? Yes, no. Just kind of showing the bar chart, or what features of the Apple Watch do you use the most? That would also be a good kind of bar chart, right? And if you want to know more about kind of how to implement that, I'm happy to talk about it. It's something that most social media apps have built in, right? Like when you do the poll of your followers or of whoever, you're going to get a bar chart for the different responses that people have, right? But if you have, say, like a causal question, then you can maybe report your results in a different way. So here, let's kind of finish up our first half with this company, Pandora. So Pandora is an internet radio company. What does that mean? It means it's like regular radio, but you kind of listen to it on your computer by logging into their website, and it'll play different radio stations, right? Initial thought for Pandora, they're losing money, okay? Their costs are big, their revenues are small. How does the company make money? By selling advertisements, right? Like most internet companies. So when you're listening to internet radio, you'll hear advertisements. And that's how Pandora is making money, by selling advertisement space to companies that want to advertise to you. The obvious research question is, how many ads should we play, right? We're losing money. We want to increase revenues. The only way we can do that is by increasing the number of ads, or by kind of getting more people to listen to more ads. How do we do it? So how did they do it? They gathered experimental data, right? So what we can see here, each of these points represents a different combination of a number of ads that you hear per hour, and how many ads, or sorry, a number of interruptions per hour, and how many ads you hear per interruption. So if you look down here, right, in the bottom right, you can see 6x2. That means every hour you hear 6 ads, or 6 interruptions, and each interruption has 2 ads, okay? So that's kind of in the bottom right. And as you go from left to right along the x-axis, you're getting more and more kind of ad time per hour, right? In the very top left, you can see just 3 interruptions, and each interruption only has 1 ad, okay? On the y-axis, we have total hours spent listening per month on average, right? So this is saying how much time do the customers spend on Pandora? And what you can see is that as we go to the right, as we increase the amount of ads people have to listen to, they spend less and less time on the internet radio site, okay? So they listen less. So what have the authors of this study, so this guy, David Riley, was the chief economist at Pandora, and he ran this experiment. So they're basically finding how much do people listen, like quantity of listening, as a function of price. What is the price? When you listen to the internet radio, you have to hear ads, which is annoying, right? It's annoying to listen to ads. So that's kind of the price you pay to use this service. So they found that as you increase ads, people listen less, right? And we know once you have a demand curve, once you know what's the trade-off between, if I change the price, how many customers do I lose? It's true that I lose customers, but I also get more price, a higher amount of ad revenue per customer, right? As I increase the number of ads, I'm losing people, but the ones who stay, I'm making more money off of them, right? So that allows you to kind of figure out a trade-off between, how many ads should I play per hour to maximize my revenue? Okay, so it's 2:02. So we're going to break. We're just going to break for 5 minutes today. So that means we'll get back together at 2:07. That's because after the break, we have a little mini case where I'll break you guys out into groups, and you can kind of meet each other and chat if you've not met each other for the first time, and also do a little tiny case study. So we'll get back together. Oh, now it's 2:03. So 2:08, come back. and then we'll do this little case. Okay, I'll stay in chat if you have any questions. All right, it's 2:08. So for the next 10 minutes, so till 2:18, what I want you guys to do, two things. One, I'm going to break you out into your project groups, into breakout rooms, so you guys can meet and discuss your projects. And two, I want you to think also about this mini case, where we're again thinking about the Apple Watch, and Apple sees that, people are really exercising differently since COVID-19. And maybe that presents an opportunity for their product, right? So what I want you to do is state a research question related to this opportunity, and then categorize it, right, as either exploratory, descriptive, or causal, okay? So let me put you guys, if you used your University of Toronto email to log in to Zoom, then you should now be kind of prompted to join your correct room. If you didn't use your University of Toronto email, let me know, and I'll try to put you in your right room. Welcome back. So I hope you guys had a good chance to chat and meet your group mates if you hadn't met them before. Let's maybe have one group offer what kind of question they came up with for this mini case for the Apple Watch. So yeah, whichever group, anyone who wants to just put up your hand and walk us through what your group did. Yeah, Albert.
Yeah, hi sir. So like our group think one questions, and so I about the research question, right? So should we still develop the function of the Apple Watch related to the exercise? So you can see the graph. So we can see like most of people right now, they do not exercise a lot, right? They don't work out at home. So we should we like put all our resources or focus on developing the function of the access. So maybe we can put our resources to other like function like the calendar or study or work or working, right?
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, so you see this graph and you see, oh, people aren't really working out. They're not going to use the exercise features. Let's put our development resources into something else. Okay, cool. So yeah, you're thinking, what should we focus on instead of exercise? Great question. Would you say it's exploratory, descriptive, or causal?
Yeah, I think it's exploratory because we don't know like what customers like most focus on, right?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. Awesome. That's a great question. So very nice. If there's another group that's really proud, yeah, Ariane.
So we came up with the question that what kind of workouts is more popular amongst more people. For example, during COVID, people are not going to the gym, so like home workouts are more popular nowadays. So so yeah, like after figuring out what kind of workouts like body weight training may be popular, and so I feel like that's descriptive because that's like more in detail.
Yeah, so kind of the customers who are kind of still working out or who want to work out, what are they doing? And then, yeah, I would agree. So if you, with that question, would you be thinking about what would your next step be? Let's say you answer it and you see, yeah, a lot more people are kind of just maybe like going on walks instead of commuting, let's say, right? They're using their time to do like low intensity exercise, right?
Yeah, so for that, like from my knowledge, Apple is doing something called Fitness Plus. So like in Fitness Plus, what they're doing is like they have like podcasts that like while people are walking, they people are motivating or like telling them stories that like really assist them with walking or maybe like even running too, like
Yeah, no, that sounds nice. Yeah, I just learned about Fitness Plus recently, but it sounds like someone at Apple was kind of thinking about what they should be adding to Apple Watch. And this feature, I think, is probably super popular over the past year. Awesome. Yeah, Boyan.
Hi, Professor God. So my group were thinking like if like the purchase Apple Watch would like increase the like workload of like people who has not purchased Apple Watch. So like because like like COVID-19, everyone's like staying at home, right? And not everyone would like do exercise if like they were super busy and stuff. So we're just thinking, we're just trying to do a market research to see if they would like work out or exercise more. And also we're curious about like if they purchase Apple Watch, if they will they like stay the same place every single time to exercise, or they will change the place to go out.
Yeah, interesting. So yeah, like where are people exercising?
Yeah,
kind of during COVID with their Apple Watch. That's interesting.
That's kind of a question.
Okay, cool. And I would say probably like a descriptive question, right?
Yep.
Awesome.
Thank
All
you.
right. So yeah, thanks to everyone who responded. So let's kind of continue on with the lecture. To just wrap up research. So you can do good research, you can ask a good question, and you can gather good data, but you still need to make a decision, right? And just because you've done good research doesn't mean you're going to make a good decision, right? So we talked about Lego, and Lego, they're worried, girls are playing with it. They did the research, they found out, okay, yeah, very few girls are playing with Lego. They're only, 9% of our users. So what should Lego do? So Lego kind of decided to come out with products that were sort of targeted at girls. We can kind of see this as like a very sort of maybe stereotypical target, right? So this is basically saying like there's Lego and then there's sort of Lego friends, right? So the backlash of this of kind of introducing this product was fairly large. A lot of parents thought, why are you kind of giving me this sort of pink Lego? Can't girls kind of just play with regular Lego? So Lego maybe had good intentions, right? They want to create a product that they think will appeal more to a group that doesn't really play with Lego. But they kind of went about it in a way that was sort of stereotypical and kind of made people feel offended, right? So not a guarantee that you're going to make a good choice once you've done good research. So in the last part of the lecture, let's talk a bit about consumer behavior. So there's going to be kind of a few key concepts. Consumer behavior is here, we're going to be talking about the buying behavior of final consumers. By final consumers, I mean consumers who are buying the goods or services for their own personal consumption, right? They're not buying it as an input in a home business. And it's definitely not like a business buying it to use it to make money. We're talking about consumers buying it for their own personal use. And why do we study consumer behavior? One thing you might think is this helps us learn how to persuade consumers to buy our products, right? Instead of the competitors' products. That's kind of the view of marketing where we imagine marketers are just trying to convince people to buy. And that is something that you do. That is something you learn from consumer behavior, but you learn a lot more, right? How do you improve your product offering in the first place, for instance? How should you set your price? Where should you be selling your product, right? So all of the 4 Ps, not just promotion, are reasons why you might want to study consumer behavior, because once you learn how consumers behave, you can pick those 4 Ps better. So basically helping create value, not just capture value. So when we study consumer behavior, typically in the past, we've thought about this sort of simple relationship where on the left, we have marketing or other stimuli. And when you change, say, the price or your promotions, that will lead you to a buyer response, right? If I change my advertising or if I lower the price, then people will do something differently, right? You kind of change a stimulus, you get a response, okay? Now, this is what's known as the behavioralist approach, okay? And what we kind of do today in modern marketing is more so we go into this sort of decision-making process of consumers and try to understand, when we change something and we see a response, why exactly do we see that response, right? What sort of patterns of consumer behavior are leading buyers to respond in the way that they do? And once we learn that, then we can make our choices better, right? So kind of consumer behavior research has evolved to sort of look at this black box, okay? So we can kind of think about why we might want to look inside the black box by looking at kind of 2 different options of products, okay?
Sorry for interrupting, Professor. I think your screen is still frozen on the Lego slide.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah, it looks like Zoom is messing up again. So let's see what we can do. Can everyone see the Lego slide now? I can see
Yep.
chat. Yeah. Okay. And if can you see it's changed?
Yep, it has been
Okay.
changed.
All right. Perfect. So yeah, consumer behavior. These were the slides that I was talking about. So you can go back and listen to what I was saying and kind of look at these slides. But in the interest of time, we'll kind of keep going. So when we look inside kind of the black box of consumer decision making, we can kind of think about two very different products. So first product, just a pair of socks. Yeah. So when you kind of look at your own feet, maybe you're wearing socks right now, just kind of think about these socks and ask yourself the following questions. Where and when did I buy them? Why did I buy this particular pair? And from the moment you first saw this pair of socks, how much time did you spend thinking before you decided to buy them? What other factors did you consider when you were buying them, or what factors in general? And did you ask anyone for advice as you were buying these socks, right? If so, who? Okay. A lot of questions, most of which you probably didn't think about when you were buying these socks, right? Versus your decision to come to UTM, right? This one, you probably maybe have a better sense, where was I when I applied? Why did I apply to UTM? And when you first heard about UTM, how long did you think before deciding whether to apply or not? What factors did you consider? Who did you ask for advice? And if you could do it over again, would you apply to any other schools, right? Two very different products. With the University of Toronto, Mississauga, you're probably thinking a lot more about these questions when you're purchasing, right? So we can kind of think there's maybe different kinds of buying behavior, right? And the same stimulus won't always lead to the same response. It'll depend on the context and even the kind of product, right? So in the bottom right corner, we see this phrase, habitual buying behavior. And that's at the intersection of low involvement, so you're not thinking very much, and few differences between brands. So the brands are all very similar. So these are socks, right? For most people. You're just not thinking too much about anything. You're maybe just buying the pair that works well for you, right? Versus upper left, we have, say, complex buying behavior, where there's high involvement, you're thinking a lot, and there are significant differences between brands, right? And this would be something like UTM, right? Because even within the University of Toronto schools, right, UTM is very different than UTSC, right? One of them is here in like Mississauga, the other one is in Scarborough. Location is a huge component of the attributes of these two different schools. So we do have very significant differences when you're kind of picking universities, right? So different kinds of buying behavior. The next thing, kind of a key concept for this lecture to take away, is the idea of customer value, right? So customer relationship management is how we kind of manage our customers, how we attract customers, and how we retain customers. And one core rule in customer relationship management is that customers will buy from the firm that offers the highest customer perceived value. What is customer perceived value? it's the customer's evaluation of the difference between all the benefits and all the costs of a particular product or market offering. Now, let's break down this term customer perceived value, right? So again, like what is value? We kind of talked about that in the first lecture or in the second lecture, right? Value is kind of anything that fulfills a need or a want for the customer, right? Customers are buying from the firm that gives them the highest customer perceived value, okay? Now we use the word customer perceived value instead of just offers the highest value because the value of a product can be very different to different customers, right? Different people might care about different product features, okay? So there's kind of a customer specific component to value. And products can be valuable in fundamentally different ways. But we also have this word perceived, right? Perceived value, it's not just a customer's value. I don't buy from the firm that offers me the highest customer value. It's customer perceived value. And perceived value means that the value that I put on a product, it can change with culture and with context. And as we'll see next lecture, it might not even reflect a customer's true value, right? How much I think I like the product, how much I think I value the product, might not be how much I actually value it once I have it and once I'm actually kind of using it, right? So we'll discuss, this gap between perceived and true customer value next lecture. But many things will affect behavior and perception, right? You do have cultural things, social things, demographics, right? So age and life cycle, your occupation, and psychological things, right? Your beliefs, your attitudes, So customer perceived value can vary a lot across customers and even within customers, right? So, it's actually kind of tricky, right? You're trying to be the firm that offers the highest customer perceived value, but each customer perceives a different value, right? And that value might not be constant over time, right? So it's actually quite challenging, right? To be the firm that offers the highest CPV. Now, we have some additional key customer relationship management measures. In addition to customer perceived value, we have customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction is the difference between perceived performance of a product and the customer perceived value at time of purchase. Okay, so what's the main difference between these two things? Customer perceived value is, say, before I buy it or kind of just when I'm buying it, that's how much I perceive my value for it. My satisfaction is once I've already bought it and I'm using it, it has some performance, right? Some perceived performance. And my satisfaction is the difference between the perceived performance and what I thought the value was when I bought it. The desired outcomes of customer relationship management, like I said, are to attract customers, right? That relies on high customer perceived value to make sure that customers are buying our product, but also customer retention, right? Loyalty relies on not CPV, but ongoing satisfaction, right? The difference between how it's actually performing and how they thought it would perform, right? So going back, we have kind of customer satisfaction is equal to perceived performance minus CPV, right? And when marketers influence CPV, right, when we kind of try to change how people perceive the value, right, maybe we drop the price, then we have to consider the trade-off. When you set CPV too low, what that prevents is attracting customers, right? If no one perceives your product to be the best one, no one's going to buy it or use it. However, if you set CPV too high, then what's the trade-off? What would be the downside of setting CPV, really increasing CPV so that customers really perceive this to be an amazing product, maybe more amazing than it actually is? Yeah, hopes are too high, expectations are too high. Yeah, you're going to prevent them from being satisfied, right? If you're increasing CPV, but perceived performance stays the same, satisfaction is going down, right? So you're going to be presenting, yeah, you have a high expectation differential, and you're going to be preventing retention. So we're going to touch on this again next lecture. So in the last bit of the lecture, let's talk about kind of our buyers' sort of rational decision process that we imagine them going through. And I put the asterisk on buyer decision process because we see here that there's 5 steps, but not every product is going to involve these 5 steps, right? We can already see one of the steps is information search. When you're buying socks, you're probably not doing much information search, right? You might not even be evaluating alternatives in step 3, right? You might just be saying, hey, I need socks, and then buying the pair that you like, right? So there's an asterisk because, you know, this is kind of like the full process, but it's not the case that consumers go through every step for every purchase. So step 1 is need recognition. Generally, it occurs when the buyer recognizes a problem or a need, and it's triggered by one of the following. It could be an internal stimulus. This would be something like, I'm hungry, I'm cold, you know, I want more friends, whatever. An external stimulus could be marketing, right? Promotions, or just things that you notice out in the world, right? For instance, the syllabus telling you, you know, here's the recommended textbook, right? That's an external stimulus that might say, hey, you know, I might want the textbook. It's not required though. Here we have, you know, just kind of some standard promotional advertisements from Snickers, right? So hunger is the key internal stimulus. Ultimate goal of this ad, get you to buy a Snickers, right? Now, in this case, does need recognition begin with an internal stimulus or an external? Well, here we definitely have an external, right? We see a promotion. If you're already hungry, then this maybe kind of triggers you to recognize that internal stimulus more. If you're not hungry, you might just remember this ad, right? So that the next time you are hungry, actually, this ad is the thing that you think about, right? So external stimuli are sometimes used to maybe activate a feeling of need, but sometimes they're also used to just prime you to consider the next time your need does arise, this is what you think about, right? So yeah, a lot of advertising is not meant to kind of convince you to do something right then and there. It's to sort of create a memory that acts as an internal stimulus later on. And we'll kind of see why this is something that marketers really focus on. Step 2 is information search. So when the customer is, you know, moved to search for more information, that might be an active process where you're Googling or asking your friends, or it could be a passive process where you're just paying more attention to the information that's around you, right? There's lots of different sources of information, but they're not all equal. Personal information or personal sources, So from family, friends, and neighbors is probably the gold standard for information source, right? Asking your family or friends, like, what product do you recommend? What service person do you recommend? What restaurant do you recommend, right? That's a source that you trust. And so kind of, but that's a source that, you know, it's not like the advertiser is paying your family to tell you to go to this restaurant. It's something that kind of needs to be already a relationship between your source of information and that brand, right? Experiential information at the bottom there is also a very kind of key. Who can you trust better than yourself, right? If you've experienced the product and you know you like it, then maybe, you know, that's the best source of information. You know, the problem with experiential information for a marketer is, how do I actually get you to like and trust the product before you buy it, right? You can think of some options, and we'll talk more about them next class. But it can be expensive as the marketer, right? The next two, public and commercial. So public sources of information are things like ratings on Google or Amazon or wherever. Public sources of information tend to be trusted to a point. I think people do sometimes think that ratings can be bought. So the rating you see on a website doesn't reflect the truth. And that's because, you know, rating is not compulsory. Only people who really care or really hated the product or who are paid are going to be the ones who rate it, right? And the last kind of least trusted source of information is commercial, right? So advertisements, packaging, dealer websites, right? So what do we search for? We search for what products are there and what characteristics do they have? That's the information we want. So let's look at kind of a standard search. So here on Google, you know, I searched for plumbing repair in Mississauga, okay? And we see some options. When we look at these options, is this a public source of information or is this a commercial source of information? Yeah, why commercial? Yeah, it says it's paid ads, right? Google guaranteed. So these ads are sponsored, right? They're not the organic results. These companies have paid Google to put their ads, to put their links to their websites at the top, right? So the star ratings might be public, but do we trust them given that these companies are kind of paying to be put at the top, right? So this is kind of a commercial source, but it's disguised as a public source, right? Okay. So here we're looking at a shelf, which you might see in, say, like a Shoppers Drug Mart. And can anyone tell me what product are we looking at here? What are all these examples of? Yeah, these are all deodorants, right? This is deodorant. So when we look at this, when one of you guys kind of goes to Shoppers Drug Mart and picks a deodorant out, are you picking between all of the different options? Are you considering all of these different things? Yeah, it's too many, right? You could spend an hour reading every single label, right? Isabella says you kind of consider the brand. Great. So amongst all the choices you have, very few of them you actually consider, right? The set that you consider, maybe it's your target brand. Okay, so let's say you pick your brand. Let's say now you're picking cereal, another thing where there's like a whole wall of different colorful boxes. So you pick your cereal and you can see, okay, there's Kellogg's, Corn Flakes and Rice Krispies and Fiber Plus, right? So when you look at this brand, I don't know if whoever amongst you eats cereal, which one of these would you consider, if any? Boyang says fiber plus, very nice. It's healthy. Whichever one looks good. So I think for some people, when they look at this group of products sold by their favorite brand or their chosen brand, maybe they're just focusing on this middle one, maybe because, it looks healthy and the other ones don't look healthy. So really you're only considering the healthy options, right? So these two examples tell us something about how people evaluate alternatives, okay? People evaluate alternatives when they use the information that they have to look at different products in their consideration set, okay? So what are this word consideration set, what does that mean? So the consideration set is the set of products that you actually consider buying. It's different than your choice set. With the deodorant, your choice set was huge, but most of you only considered a single brand, right? And within that brand, maybe you look at the different products, but like we saw with Kellogg's, maybe you only look at one or two of the products, right? Your consideration set is very, very small. And for most customers, the consideration set is very, very small compared to the choice set, right? And for marketers, that creates a challenge. Really, you want customers to be considering your product, right? How do you get your product to be considered when there's so many choices out there, right? You want to kind of like build that relationship. You want to get into that consideration set. This is why it can often be very difficult for new products to succeed and why they fail at such a high rate, because a lot of the time people just don't even consider. So evaluating alternatives, you process information, you weigh the pros and cons, and you kind of arrive at your preferred choice, right? What is your preferred choice? The choice that gives you the highest customer perceived value. And along the way, marketers kind of strive to highlight the features that are the strengths of the product, right? So that it's evaluated favorably here. But more than that, it's not enough to just be a strong product. Like I said, you have to also be a considered product. And you can be a very strong product, but if no one is thinking about you, no one's ever going to buy that product. Second to last, we have the purchase decision. And the purchase decision is when the customer buys the product with the highest perceived value. Right? Straightforward. However, there's no guarantee that a product is purchased, right? Of all the products, the one with the highest customer perceived value might still be worse than not buying anything at all, right? So there's no guarantee that you actually see someone buy the product, even if you're the best relative to your competitors. You also have to be the best relative to just, the outside option of not doing anything. And, sometimes you'll see multiple products being bought. The last step is post-purchase behavior, and this is relatively new, right? So post-purchase behavior, a lot of the time, involves writing a review, right? A way to stay or to continue being engaged with the company even after you bought their product, right? Typically, we imagine this is driven by satisfaction or dissatisfaction felt after the purchase, which is going to be based on the perceived performance relative to customer perceived value or the expectations, right? So that customer satisfaction is sort of crucial to maintaining a long-term profitable relationship with the customer. Okay, so when we think about choosing our Ps, our 4 Ps, in order to affect the buyer's decision process, one thing that's kind of clear right away is that promotion will affect the buyer at almost every stage, right? It will affect their need recognition, like we saw with Snickers. It'll affect their information search, like we saw with Google. And it can also affect how they evaluate alternatives, right? By creating a promotion that reminds customers that this is a very high quality product, or a promotion that's something like a price reduction. This will affect how they evaluate alternatives, right? In contrast, actually doing things like changing the price, changing the product, or changing the place will affect which product consumers perceive to be the most valuable, but they won't necessarily affect the customer at the earlier stages in the process. Okay. So all of you have kind of done an economics prerequisite for this course. So I'm going to take a few slides. You don't need to know how to do kind of economics style questions in this course, but I want to relate the buyer's process that we've just outlined here to courses that you might have taken, right? Because in economics, we also have a framework for how people choose what to buy, right? The way we typically specify that is we have products, say X and Y. The products have particular prices and consumers have amount of money to spend, right? And consumers are trying to reach the maximum level of value that they can, or utility, which is summarized by this function, which is defined in terms of the amount of goods that we consume. And we want to maximize that relative to our budget, right? Relative to what we're spending, okay? So this graph might look familiar to you from microeconomics. We're trying to get to the highest utility curve we can, conditional on the product set being affordable. And utility maximization will give a demand curve. It'll basically relate how much we buy to the price. So how is that related to what we've just talked about here? So the basic economics model is about steps 3 and 4. Evaluation of alternatives and purchase decision. So in the basic economics model, we already know all the information. We know that we want to buy stuff. We're just deciding how much of each thing to buy based on its price and how much utility it's going to give us, right? That's how we kind of think about the economics framework. Is there any room to incorporate things like need recognition and information search into those quantitative economic tools? And the answer is yes. And this is kind of where marketing has gone recently, right? Especially if you go on to do advanced work in marketing, you're going to see the tools of economics being used, right? The idea of need recognition, if the weather triggers a need, right? Like it's raining, I need an umbrella. You can just make people's utility or make people's demand rely on the weather, right? So same thing for information search, right? If we think that it's kind of people sort of spend effort and time gathering information before they make their choice, well, we can incorporate a model where people do exactly that, right? Like they're spending some time or energy to figure out the attributes of different products. And then once they know those attributes, then they make their decision of how much and which one to buy. So economics tools are extremely common now in marketing. We use them more and more, and they've kind of expanded to encompass all of these different stages in the process. Very briefly, in fact, I won't really talk about this. Business behavior is very similar to consumer behavior. Similar steps, except information search can be slightly different and evaluation of alternatives can be slightly different. The big difference between a business customer and just a regular household customer is that the business customer often wants something custom, right? I want you to make something that serves my purpose exactly, right? So the alternatives are not fixed. They might change depending on what you're considering. Okay. So very last, what about products where you don't know why you need it, right? We talked about a Snickers bar, obvious why you need that. If you're hungry, you need food. Does anyone know, here I have a product, it's a new product that I get ads for on Instagram all the time. Does anyone know what this product is? Has anyone seen this before?
I think your screen's frozen again, Prof.
Am I frozen again? All right, where am I? Which slide am I on?
The basic economic model.
Basic economic model. Okay, all right. Let's... can you still hear me?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, so it looks like it's not cooperating to restart the screen sharing. So the last few slides are just on new product adoption. Okay, so everything you need to know about the new product adoption process is on those slides. So I'll leave that for you guys because I'm sure some of you have places to be at 3. So yeah, okay, so this was a bit difficult with the Zoom. I'll figure out what was going on there, make sure it works for next time. But in the meantime, yeah, so continue working on your projects. And if you found this useful to be able to meet with your teammates in class, let me know. And we'll see if we can set something like that up again for maybe next class or the class after. Okay. So yeah, other than that, that's everything for this class. So I'll see you guys next week.